On June 22, 1983, 15-year-old Emanuela Orlandi disappeared as she was walking home after a flute lesson at the Sant'Apollinare complex near Piazza Navona in Rome. She was the daughter of Ercole Orlandi, a key employee of the Vatican. Her disappearance caused national media attention in Italy, with numerous theories popping up, including the involvement of Italian mafia, international terrorists, and the Vatican itself. But the case was never solved, and Emanuela's body was never found. Today we'll look into the mysterious disappearance of the Vatican Girl to see if we can determine what most likely happened. Emanuela Orlandi was the fourth of 5 children born to Ercole Orlandi, a clerk of the Institute for the Works of Religion in the Holy See, which is the central governing body of the Roman Catholic Church and the Vatican city-state. The Orlandi family had been serving as ushers and messengers for the Vatican for more than 100 years, allowing them to live within the city. The 5 children, 1 boy and 4 girls, had free run within the city, including the Vatican Gardens. Emanuela was 15 years old at the time and had just finished her 2nd year of secondary school in Rome. Though the school year had ended, she still went to the Scuola di Musica Tommaso Ludovico da Vittoria 3 times a week for flute lessons. On that fateful day, she took the number 64 bus to travel to the music school. She left home around 4 p.m. and had even asked her brother Pietro to drive her to class, because the weather was extremely hot and she was already running late. Unfortunately, Pietro had other commitments at the time. According to witnesses, Emanuela appeared distracted in class and asked to leave early at 6:50 p.m. She then called her sister Federica. She said that a man claiming to be a representative of Avon Products had approached her before class. He had offered her a job handing out flyers at a fashion show for 2 hours. She was supposed to meet him after her flute lesson ended. Federica was skeptical about the job because the compensation was too high. She encouraged Emanuela to go home instead and to discuss the job offer first with their parents. As she left school, Emanuela told 2 female classmates about the job offer she received. They walked with her to the bus stop in Corso Rinascimento, which was in front of Palazzo Madama, before parting ways. While they rode the bus, they saw Emanuela talking to a woman with red hair. Emanuela was supposed to meet another of her sisters, Cristina, outside the Tribunale della Cassazione, but she never showed. When she still hadn't gone home hours later, the Orlandi family started searching the area between the Vatican and the school. They also called the director of the music school to ask if any of Emanuela's classmates knew where she was. Her father, Ercole, reported her disappearance to the police. Unfortunately, they didn't take the report seriously, assuming that the teenage girl was merely out with her friends. It wasn't until the next day that Emanuela was officially declared missing. Over the next few days, the Orlandi family received calls with tips about Emanuela. One caller, who called himself Pierluigi, stated that his girlfriend saw a girl matching Emanuela's description playing a flute in their Campo del Fiore. He claimed that the girl called herself Barbara and she was selling cosmetics. Another caller, this time named Mario, gave a similar story. These 2 were just the beginning of hundreds of phone calls made to the Orlandi family over the next few decades. Meanwhile, the police investigating the case discovered that an officer on duty in front of Palazzo Madama that night saw Emanuela talking to a man holding an Avon Cosmetics bag. The man reportedly drove a dark green BMW. The authorities were able to track down the vehicle, but they discovered that it was owned by a woman. They also discovered that the car was being repaired because one of its windows had been broken from the inside. Unfortunately, this lead was no longer investigated after the officer who had found the lead was removed from the case. On July 3, 1983, Pope John Paul II made a public appeal for Emanuela's safe return during the Angelus, a public prayer. The Pope also stated, "I am close to the Orlandi family." This caused the disappearance of Emanuela to be catapulted into the limelight. Within days of this appeal, the Orlandi family received a call telling them that they had kidnapped Orlandi to secure the release of Mehmet Ali Agca in exchange for her. Aja was the man who attempted to shoot Pope John Paul II on May 13, 1981. To prove his claim, the man, who was dubbed as the American by the Orlandi family because of his accent, provided a photocopy of Emanuela's registration card for her music school. He also reportedly sent a letter that contained photos of her sheet music, as well as a receipt for tuition and a note handwritten by Emanuela. He also played a recording of a girl who sounded like Emanuela saying the name of her school. However, the exchange never happened, and the American stopped calling. In 2012, it was rumored that Emanuela's body might be buried in the grave of a Roman mobster. However, when the tomb was opened, the authorities didn't find anything that could be linked to Emanuela. In 2018, human remains were found in an annex of the Holy See Embassy in central Rome. Speculations arose that these may be Emanuela's. However, DNA tests did not produce a match. In the same year, the Orlandi family lawyer, Laura Scrow, received a letter with a picture in it. It was a photo of a marble statue of an angel looking down on the tombs of the German princesses in the Teutonic Cemetery. The note said, "If you want to find Emanuela, search where the angel is looking." In 2019, the Vatican allowed the authorities to open up the tomb of the angel of Princess Sophie von Hohenlohe, who died in 1836, and the tomb of Princess Carlotta Federica of Mecklenburg, who died in 1840. No bodies were found, including those of the Danish and Albanian princesses, who were supposed to be buried inside. Over the years, there have been several other investigations launched on the disappearance of Emanuela, with two major inquests lasting for a number of years. One was from 1983 to 1997, and the other was from 2008 to 2015. Unfortunately, all these inquiries were concluded without any further developments in the case. In January 2023, the Vatican's promoter of justice, Alessandro Didi, reopened the case. This was just months after Netflix released its documentary Vatican Girl, which covered the disappearance of Emanuela, and weeks after the Orlandi family asked the Italian parliament to open an inquest on the case. On June 22, 2023, the 40th anniversary of Emanuela's disappearance, Didi stated that they had uncovered some investigative leads worthy of further study. Reportedly, they had sent all the related documentation to the Rome prosecutor's office. In November 2023, a new parliamentary inquiry was launched by the Italian Senate to reinvestigate Emanuela's case alongside with another missing girl case from the same year, Mirella Gregori. The Parliamentary Commission of Inquiry has interviewed many people regarding Emanuela, including famous musician Alberto Laurenti, who was an acquaintance of hers from music school, and the former head of the Vatican Gendarmerie Domenico Gianni. More twists and turns have been revealed through the inquiry, but it has yet to reveal any results, leading to the discovery of what happened to Emanuela and where she is today. The disappearance of Emanuela Orlandi has been one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in Italy. Though the resolution of the case is still not in sight, there are several theories that have potential. Theory number 1. Kidnapped by a stranger. According to Emanuela's sister, Orlandi called her that afternoon because a man had approached her and asked if she was interested in a job at Avon, the cosmetics company. Two witnesses corroborated her statement, reporting that they saw a girl matching Emanuela's description talking to a man outside of her high school. It is theorized that the job offer was merely a lure to kidnap Emanuela, sexually assault her, and then murder her. Kidnapping cases were not uncommon back then. In fact, many of the theories concerning Emanuela's disappearance involved her getting kidnapped. The question is, by who? Theory number 2. Kidnapped by the Italian mafia. In 2008, Sabrina Minardi, the ex-mistress of the boss of criminal organization Banda della Maliana, called Enrico De Pedis, confessed to the authorities that he was the one who orchestrated the kidnapping of Emanuela. According to her, the kidnapping was done at the behest of Paul C. Marcinkus, an American archbishop who was also the former president of the Vatican Bank. And the reason for the kidnapping? Some theorized that Ercole, Emanuela's father, had evidence of Marcinkus possibly doing something wrong or illegal. Marcinkus had Depedis kidnap Emanuela to keep Ercole quiet. Another theory was that the kidnapping was orchestrated by the Banda della Meliana in order to recover a large amount of money that it had laundered through Banco Ambrosiano, which had collapsed in 1982. One of the bank's main shareholders was the Vatican's Istituto per le Opere Religiose. When the bank crashed, the Meliana gang lost millions, which some believe they thought they could recover from the Vatican through a kidnap for ransom. Coincidentally, the Vatican's IOR did restore money to Banco Ambrosiano creditors in May 1984. According to Minardi, she had seen Emanuela in a car driven by one of Depedis' men, Sergio Virtu, at Your Lake sometime after the kidnapping. Their group traveled to Tor Vaianica, where they entrusted Emanuela to a woman. A few months later, Emanuela was then handed over to a priest at a Vatican gas station. Another woman who used to be with Sergio also gave a statement that he had confided in her in a vague way that he was involved in the girl's disappearance. When the police interviewed Sergio, he denied having known Depedis as well as any involvement in Emanuela's purported kidnapping. But another member of the gang, Maurizio Abatino, reportedly said, "I've always known that the kidnap of Emanuela Orlandi was our work." There is another piece of evidence that potentially links Depedis to Emanuela. A traffic warden who had seen Emanuela talking to a man with a green BMW worked with the police to produce a sketch, and the resulting image looks very similar to Depedis. Here's one more suspicious detail that connects Depedis to Emanuela. The police later discovered that the former rector of Sant'Apollinare, where Emanuela disappeared, Monsignor Piero Vergari, knew Depedis. Vergari was a person of interest in the initial investigation. That's not all. According to reports, Vergari petitioned to have Depedis' body buried at the Basilica of Sant'Apollinare, a place usually reserved for cardinals and senior figures in the Vatican. It certainly isn't the usual practice to allow career criminals to be buried there. In 2012, a rumor went around that Emanuela's body may be buried in Depedis' grave. The Vatican allowed his remains to be exhumed at the request of the Orlandi family. However, they found nothing to connect Emanuela to the grave. Theory number 3. Murdered by her uncle. Among the documents released by the Vatican in 2023 were correspondence between the then Vatican Secretary of State Agostino Casaroli and a Colombian priest who was the confessor and spiritual guide of the Orlandi family. The documents seem to point towards Emanuela's uncle, Mario Meneguzzi, who was married to her maternal aunt. Allegedly, he had sexually harassed Emanuela's 21-year-old sister Natalina around the time she disappeared. It is believed that he might have sexually abused Emanuela too. According to Pietro Orlandi, Emanuela's brother, the police had already cleared his uncle of suspicion years ago, and this attempt made by the Vatican to place blame on him again was shameful. In fact, it was already established that the uncle was 200 kilometers away from the area where Emanuela disappeared. In fact, he was with his family on holiday at the time and only returned to Rome when he received a call from his brother, Emanuela's father, that evening. Theory number 4. Kidnapped by terrorists. Just days after the Pope made a public appeal for Emanuela's safe return, the Orlandi family started receiving calls from an unknown terrorist group who demanded the release of Mehmet Ali Aja in exchange for her. The calls made by the American grew increasingly dark. At one point, they even provided a recording of a girl screaming, though the Orlandi family stated through a representative that they didn't believe that the girl in the recording was Emanuela. In 1985, Aja was interviewed in prison. He confirmed that it was indeed his group that had taken Emanuela in exchange for his freedom. He also stated that she was safe, not in danger. However, he didn't provide any other proof beyond that statement. In 2013, a man called Marco Accetti claimed to be the American who had kidnapped Emanuela and Mirella on behalf of lay people and clergy who were against the anti-communist policies of Pope Wojtyla. According to Accetti, he had contacted Emanuela and persuaded her to leave home. As proof, Accetti gave the authorities a flute kept in a black leather case that was supposedly Emanuela's. The Orlandi family confirmed that it did look like the one Emanuela was using at the time she disappeared. However, Accetti was acquitted when the investigation closed in 2015. Take note that Emanuela wasn't the only girl to go missing that year. Mirella Gregori, a 15-year-old girl, went missing around 40 days before she did. Mirella went to meet a middle school friend of hers named Alessandro, but she told her mother that she would return in 10 minutes, but she never returned home. The terrorist group also vaguely referenced Mirella's disappearance, which caused the authorities to initially link the two together. However, on October 27, 1983, the alleged kidnappers revealed that Mirella was dead and that they would return her body a week before Christmas. To this day, Mirella's body has never been found. The investigation into her disappearance was relaunched alongside that of Emanuela's in November 2023. Theory number 5. Ran away from home. On June 25th, the Orlandi family received a call from a boy named Pierluigi who claimed to have seen a girl matching Emanuela's description in Piazza Navona. According to him, the girl had her hair cut. More importantly, Pierluigi claimed that the girl told him that she had run away from home and was selling Avon products to make money. 3 days later, the Orlandi family got another call. This time, the caller called himself Mario. Mario claimed to be the owner of a bar near Ponte Vittorio, which was located between the Vatican and Emanuela's school. According to Mario, a girl named Barbara had told him that she was a runaway, but that she would be going back home for her sister's wedding. Because Natalina, Emanuela's older sister, was getting married in September, it was possible that the girl that Mario met was her. Theory number 6. Kidnapped by a high-ranking Vatican cleric. Because the Orlandi family lived within the Vatican walls, it was inevitable that some of the suspicion would fall on them. According to Pietro, the Vatican elite has long known exactly what happened to his sister. They just refused to come clean, despite repeated requests from the authorities for transparency. Of course, a statement from Emanuela's brother is not enough to convict this holy organization. In 2012, an 85-year-old priest named Father Gabriele Amorth claimed that a member of the Vatican police had kidnapped Emanuela as part of a sex ring. The reason why she was never found was because she had been murdered. The priest, who was also the chief exorcist of the Vatican, also claimed that a foreign embassy was involved in her disappearance and murder. That's not all. A friend of Emanuela's testified that a few days before she disappeared, Emanuela told her that a high-ranking Vatican cleric had sexually harassed her in the Vatican gardens. It's not the first time that a member of the Roman Catholic Church has been accused of sexual harassment. In 2013, Pope Francis was conducting his first Mass after getting selected at a small church in Vatican City. Upon seeing the Orlandi family in the crowd, he suddenly told them, "Emanuela is in heaven." Why would the Pope say such a thing if he wasn't sure that Emanuela was already dead? And how would he know that? Pietro and his mother felt chilled when they heard this. In 2017, an Italian reporter, Emiliano Fittipaldi, published a supposedly leaked Vatican document that showed a list of expenses made by the Holy See between 1983 and 1997. Allegedly, these expenses were used to hide and transfer Emanuela to various locations. The document reportedly showed that Emanuela lived in London under the care of Catholic priests until 1997, when she died. However, there was no way that the document could be verified. The Vatican called the claim false and ridiculous. The lack of evidence, aside from witness statements, makes it difficult to determine what really happened on June 22, 1983. To the best of our ability, we can only speculate that Emanuela was most likely kidnapped by the Banda della Maliana under the leadership of De Pedis. She was seen talking to a man beside a green BMW by 2 police officers. Later, a sketch of that man showed a similarity in appearance with De Pedis. It's possible that De Pedis used the job offer to lure Emanuela to come with him. But after talking with her sister, Emanuela might have changed her mind. When she was seen by her classmates talking to an unknown woman, it may have been De Pedis' accomplice trying to convince Emanuela to go with them. And when she did, they took her away, maybe transported her to an unknown location, before handing her over to a person of high authority in the Vatican. As for why De Pettis would do such a thing, some believe that it was an attempt by the Banda della Meliana to recoup some of the money they lost after the crash of the Banco Ambrosiano. Others state that Emanuela's father may have obtained evidence of a wrongdoing inside the Vatican, and kidnapping Emanuela was a way to keep him quiet. De Pettis was merely hired to be the kidnapper. Though this is speculation on our part, it is still clear that the Vatican has some knowledge of what had happened to Emanuela. There have been plenty of requests made from authorities and the Orlandi family for the organization to release details about their investigation, but to no avail. Why would they refuse to share information if they had nothing to hide? And why would Pope Francis say that Emanuela was in heaven when everyone else wasn't sure whether she was dead or alive? Of course, there's also the leaked document and the testimony of the chief exorcist of the Vatican. And then there's this. Messages from a 10-year-old chat between Francesca Immacolata Ciauchi, a PR person for the Vatican, and Monsignor Lucio Angel Vallejo Balda, the secretary of the Prefecture of Economic Affairs of the Vatican. According to a message in the chat, "In September we have to make that Orlandi thing disappear and pay the tomb raiders. You have to talk to the Pope about this. Now that we're back, we're working on the archive. And enough with the newspapers and other follies. That Orlandi thing has to disappear, and you have to mind your own business." To be fair, this message, as well as the other testimonies, is not conclusive evidence that the Vatican and the Italian mafia had anything to do with Emanuela's disappearance. But it does lead us to suspect that they are involved somehow. Whether they are directly responsible or merely covering up after the fact has yet to be determined. We can only hope that this newest inquiry into the case will finally lead to a resolution, one that will give the Orlandi family the closure they need.